this data center is going to need the equivalent of electrical usage of 750,000 homes, basically a small city.
They're basically asking for what's currently agricultural and residential land to be rezoned into light industrial. I keep hearing, oh, they won't do this to us. They can and they might. If you think they won't, I would start paying attention. There are no noise protections or light protections. We're left with abandoned buildings full of expensive or impossible to dismantle and recycle technology and a bunch of toxic chemicals. If local governments will just change their zoning because a lot of money is dangling, this can happen anywhere to anybody, but there's also a huge human impact here.
On January 15th, 2026, a short time in the future, a decision can be made that will forever change this part of Central Virginia, and most people still don't understand what's being proposed. We're going to cover all that and more in this video today. What is going on, party people? Thanks for tuning in. I've got Ms. Colleen Bowman back, co-founder of and managing editor of Neighbors for Change, fellow Wyndham resident, along with myself, concerned citizen. Today in this video, we're going to be talking about is the upcoming Planning Commission meeting that has been officially set for January 15th. 2026, where, from what I understand, the data center will be decided upon. We're all trying to figure out what the process is here, but don't worry, Colleen's going to break it down for us. Colleen, how are you doing? And thank you for joining us again.
I am doing great, and I really appreciate the opportunity to help get the word out to folks about this stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, most certainly, most certainly. Well, if you haven't seen it, we'll link up the original interview I did with Colleen, which was a really good one, really educational. I know a lot of folks that I'm friends with said they caught that, so thank you for that. For anybody who didn't see that interview, though, can you give us a quick refresher on what the Hunting Hawk Technology Park proposal is and who ultimately decides its fate?
Sure thing. The Hunting Hawk Technology Park is a proposed hyperscale data center development in Hanover County. It's adjacent to the Wyndham community and the Dominion Club golf course. And they're basically asking for what's currently agricultural and residential land to be rezoned into light industrial so that they can put data centers there. And the ultimate decision maker on whether this goes forward is the Hanover County Board of Supervisors. I think that hits your question. Is that enough of a summary?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you tell me, because I've definitely heard some, but what are the biggest misconceptions you're still hearing from, fellow Henrico and our friends over in Hanover residents about the project?
Definitely on the Henrico side, I keep hearing, oh, they won't do this to us. And they can and they might. So if you think they won't, I would start paying attention. Also, I hear that a lot of people think that, oh, this developer is just trying to use this as leverage to get approval for a neighborhood and a road. They've spent a ton of money on engineering and site plans, and they can make way more money selling this as an approved data center site than they can as a residential neighborhood. So I don't think that's a good assumption. The folks in Hanover, I don't think there's a lot of misconceptions on their part. I think they're getting up to speed and they're fighting back hard on this.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit more naive in suburban Western Henrico that we live in this bubble and like nothing bad can ever happen to us. But all right, so since we last spoke, some new documents were released by the developer, HHHunt. What are the key materials people should know about?
So the new things that are published are essentially a new conceptual master plan, which is like drawings and maps, a new traffic study, and a new proffer statement. And they're all still very high level, but they basically show pictures, impact on traffic, and proffers, which are sort of promises or offers made by the developer to the county.
Okay. And so we're filming this on December 19th. If my editors don't kill me, we'll have this video out on the 22nd or the 23rd. Obviously, we're heading into the holidays. I would imagine folks are not going to be sitting around the fireplace with the kids reading, the Hanover data center proposal. They'll probably.
Gosh, I hope not.
Yeah, right. So if somebody only has time to read one document, which one matters the most and why, would you say?
If I was going to read one of these, I would read what they have called the redlined proffer document for two reasons. One, it's not that long and it's written in kind of regular language. Like, it's definitely got lots of numbers and formatting, but it's not in legalese. So it's easy for a layperson to read. And it also shows, by what redlining means, is that it shows the changes from the last time. that they submitted it. So you can see how it's changed, and you can see basically what they're offering in terms of protections. And I think that's the most relevant to the regular person out there.
Yeah, so tell me, Colleen, in your opinion, looking at the updated conceptual master plan, looking at that document, what stands out to you immediately? What stands out to you the most?
So it's so vague, and every page is stamped with, this could change completely. I mean, one change that's very different since the last time it was published is that they've added a significant, actually, addition of property that was previously listed as not part of the project that they're now labeling as drain fields, because they've gotten rid of the private wastewater treatment facility that they were planning. And instead, they're planning on using septic and drain fields to deal with that is generated by the development. But other than that, there's no locations for like fuel storage tanks. There's no roads. There's no power line locations. So, I mean, what stands out to me the most is that there's no detail and that it could look nothing like these pictures when it actually happens.
Yeah, and those are like big, key, critical things. Those are not,
Right. It's not like where the flowers are going to be or what the sidewalks are going to look like.
Yeah, these are not finishing touch details that are minute. So talk to me about the traffic study. What does it actually claim, and where might somebody be skeptical if they were to look through that?
Okay, so the traffic study, and I will confess, it is 379 pages of a lot of tables and data, and I haven't made my way through it in detail yet. But at a high level, what they've done is done a bunch of studies and gathered a bunch of information to create a picture of what traffic could look like, and that they think it can be manageable given the traffic signals and the actions that they can take to tune those. But it is based on assumptions. And you also have to remember, when you asked about what I would be skeptical about, is that it was prepared by the Timmons Group, who is under contract to HHHunt and not to the county or to VDOT. So it is not an independent document.
Yep.
So not an independent document based on assumptions. We don't really know. VDOT did not like their first swing at the traffic study. They sent them back to the drawing board. So we'll see how they react to this second one.
Now, was that, and I haven't had a chance to look at it, was that the traffic study of what they feel like this would look like once that was all completed? Or is this also accounting for the proposed 10 years of the construction? In my opinion, would be the biggest issue with traffic.
Yeah, the construction is definitely the more impactful traffic issues because of the big trucks and if you've got a double wide load of something coming in, it blocks the whole road and not just, damages the road. But the study covered both. It covers the estimated trips during construction, and it covers the estimated trips during a normal 3-shift-a-day workday.
Gotcha. Okay. And just going back a couple steps. So you mentioned the word proffers, which I understand being a real estate agent, but in simple terms, to our lay people out there, what are proffers and why are they critical to this proposal?
Sure. I mean, in the simplest terms, they're voluntary but legally binding promises that the developers are making to the local government. They're like a conditional zoning tool, and they're binding. Once the local government accepts a proffer offer, it's part of that property's zoning, and it's enforceable even if the property changes hands. So in the case of the Hunting Hawk property, or in general in the case of data centers, these hyperscale data centers, in my opinion, should only be in areas that are zoned M2 for heavy industry, just based on the amount of noise, pollution, and other impacts that they have. But in Virginia, proffers are being commonly used to squeeze them into M1 light industrial or even non-industrial areas like agricultural or residential, like we're looking at here with Hunting Hawk. So in order to get local governments to approve their requests, developers are putting forth proffers or promising that they can mitigate the problems, make them quieter, make them safer, make them not impact the water usage, etc. That's all well and good, but we've had enough experience with data centers in Northern Virginia to be able to show that it's really not enough.
And for our folks out there, zoning is basically when the local government, the controlling government, basically decides, hey, this is what we feel like is reasonable to be allowed on specific plots of land, and they kind of make that decision up front and hand that down to the landowners. Whereas these proffers is essentially the opposite: a developer saying, hey, I know what we're looking to build doesn't necessarily meet your zoning, but these are concessions that we're willing to offer in order for you to amend your zoning. Would you say that's a good way to kind of understand that?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so let's transition. January 15th. It's now officially on the Planning Commission agenda. What does that date represent in the overall approval process?
So that means that they're going to officially hear it. The planning committee's job in Hanover County is to gather information, to make sure they have all the information that the Board of Supervisors needs to make an educated decision, and to then pass that along to the Board of Supervisors when they have it. In some counties, in Henrico and in, say, Goochland, the Planning Commission actually makes a recommendation to approve or approve with conditions or decline. Hanover doesn't do that. They just say, okay, we've got all the information, here you go.
What authority then does the Planning Commission actually have, and what decisions can they, if any, can they make that night on the 15th?
That night they can make a decision to extend the time of the meeting. They can extend the time that the applicant or proponents or opponents have to speak, and they can determine that they don't have enough information to pass along to the Board of Supervisors to make a decision, and that they need to send the applicant back to get more information, or that they need to, do more homework, and that they need a further meeting.
Okay. If they ask for more information instead of voting, what typically triggers that?
My guess is that it would be something serious, like they didn't address one of the questions that VDOT has asked on the traffic study, or that they completely were missing something that the county asked them for behind the scenes, or that a new piece of information has come to light and it's concerning and they want the information.
Okay. So let's talk about the meeting dynamics there. Is public comment typically allowed at those meetings, and how is that structured at a Hanover Planning Commission meeting typically?
So their website says that public hearing is part of all of the Hanover Planning Commission meetings, but I dug into their actual rules for committee meetings, and they're much more structured than what I have seen, for example, recently in Goochland. In Hanover, for a typical rezoning case, you get 15 minutes total for the applicant and their engineers to present, 15 minutes total for proponents of the project to speak, and 15 minutes total for opponents to speak. So if the chairman of the committee decides the issue is unusually complex, time may be adjusted in equal increments. So they could say, okay, you're each getting twice as much time. They won't just give the proponents more time or the opponents more time. Everybody gets more time. But there has to be, the meeting can't exceed 2 hours without a majority of the commission voting, and they won't do that in advance. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. Given the significant interest in this topic, I mean, we had almost 500 people show up to the applicant meeting in November. I don't think they'll be able to stick to their normal 15-minute format, but any changes that they have made or are thinking of making to that format have not been shared with us yet.
So what I'm hearing is like that's kind of a game time decision if they're going to extend that time.
That's what I'm able to glean from reading their process. Now, if they come out in January and say, okay, given what we know, we're going to do this differently, that would be great.
Now, so 2 questions. If the turnout is large, how would that affect the speaking time from the residents? And if I'm a Henrico resident like you and I, do we have a voice at these meetings? Are we simply a bystander? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, I know at the applicant meeting, they did specifically ask that Hanover residents be allowed to speak first. And I imagine that they will do that again. I don't think they'll prevent Henrico residents from speaking, but I do think they'll ask that they let Hanover go first. And if there is a time cap, it's possible that we won't get to speak. So I think it's very important you're taking advantage of your other options, like writing emails to the Board of Supervisors. And also there's a group in Hanover, a grassroots group called Friends of Hanover, that are working very hard to bring awareness to data centers. And one of the things that they're doing, because of these limitations on maybe how many people are going to get to speak at this planning committee meeting, is they're having a rally beforehand that will allow people to speak, and the media will be there so that they can try to make sure the big points get out and are spoken out loud, no matter how short the public hearing part of the actual meeting may be. So that's before the meeting at the same location, just outside.
Yeah, sounds like an opportunity for a tailgate. We forgot to mention it. Do we know what time on the 15th the meeting is?
Yes. The rally would be at 5:30. and the actual meeting starts at 6 p.m.
Gotcha.
And it's at the Hanover County Administration Building, and I can give you the address for that.
There you go. Leave your coolers and your beer at home. So it sounds like there's only going to be so many people that get to speak, right? Even if they double it to 30 minutes. Someone doesn't get to speak. Does their presence at the meeting still matter? And what are the most effective ways for Hanover residents, for Henrico residents to influence the process? Well, we'll cover that later. Does presence still matter?
I do think your presence matters. I think a lot of people showing up shows a lot of support, even if they aren't going to let you talk. It also shows that maybe their process isn't really designed to support a lot of public feedback. I also think that the news media sees the people, and that gets the message spread a lot more broadly. And I'm stumbling for my words here a bit, but if you don't show up, the argument can be made that you don't care. And part of maybe why, and I'm completely this has no grounding because I haven't gone to Hanover Board of Supervisors meetings or Planning Commission meetings. A lot of times when governments or boards make meetings at times that are hard to attend or leave very small windows for things is because they don't really want to hear. You have to push back against that and make your presence heard, even if it's only in your presence. So... Yeah, totally. I would encourage you to go even if you feel certain that you won't get time to speak, just because your presence makes a difference.
Is there anything that folks can do? So obviously show up on the 15th, right? Let's check that box. Is there anything folks can do prior to the 15th if they say, hey, I would like to somehow influence this or let my opinion be known between now and then? Is there anything that can be done?
Yeah, you can email the Hanover County Board of Supervisors. They've got individual emails and a group email form on their website. Let them know how you feel about the process. And again, I've said this before, and I say it every time I talk about communicating with elected officials. Please remember, these guys are public servants. They're not the devil. They are doing their job. They're trying to do what's best for their community, and that sometimes puts people in a tough spot. So be respectful, be factual, tell them what you think, and stay away from, nasty grams and all caps and shouting.
Turn off cap locks.
Yes.
All right, so let's maybe get back into the fine print a little bit on these proffers, because I find that interesting. So the proffers say that cooling won't use potable water. What does that wording actually imply to you?
The potable water, I'm not exactly sure how you say it, but the definition of that is, basically drinkable or usable. So
water that would be coming from wells.
Right. So cleared for human consumption and use. So typically non-potable water is considered gray water or runoff or things like that. So they haven't excluded using that type of water. And the language of potable was not included in the proffer statement before. So they've added that. So that to me is significant that it's been called out like that. I think they're probably planning to do something with site water runoff that they haven't been transparent about, which also affects the water table down the line and well water. So
another one, what's the difference between air chilled and closed loop cooling, and why does that matter to nearby residents? And this kind of ties into the water.
Yeah, so a caveat here, I am not a expert in this subject, but I've been reading a lot about it. So my understanding is that the air chilled cooling systems use far less water than the water cooled systems, to the point where they can use about 70% less water, but they still use water, and a lot of it gets dissipated through evaporation. So just from the fact that they're saying they won't use water for cooling at all from the wells, I don't know that they could get 30% of their water from some other source to be able to even use an air chilled cooling system. There's a lot of open questions on that. A closed loop liquid cooling system can mostly eliminate the need for the constant replacement of water. I'm sorry, what?
The closed loop is what they said at their proposal that they were going to be using, correct?
Yeah, they did say that, but they've added this air chilled possibility into the proffer statement.
Into the fine print.
Mm-hmm. The closed loop would imply that they are going to be trucking in millions of gallons of chemical filled fluid, basically water that's dumped full of biocides that does ultimately not have to be replenished the way that a freshwater source would be. But after a while, it is going to have to be cleaned and purged, just like any closed loop system for any kind of cooling would. A data center isn't special just because it's gigantic. Any engineer will tell you those things don't stay clean forever. You have to purge them and clean them, and there's no indication in the plan of where that sludge goes when they're done with it. So hopefully not into the drain field.
Yeah, well, another thing is at the last meeting, they said, hey, don't worry, we're going to be shipping in the water for the closed loop system from elsewhere. But don't, like, for the fire suppression, like, we only have to draw 500,000 gallons worth of water out of local. Did I hear that correctly? They were drawing 500,000 gallons of water out of local wells to fill their fire suppression.
You did. They're going to have two big 250,000 gallon tanks on site that'll be slow draw filled with the potable water for fire suppression. Now, apparently they think they're never going to have to use it because they say they're never going to have to refill it, but we'll see.
Yeah, that assumes they don't have a fire. All right, so let's talk about power. So at the applicant meeting, people heard no on-site power generation, which definitely is good that there's no nuclear reactors, within close to the neighborhood. But do the profers fully support that claim?
They don't actually. In the supporting uses document, it still says that on-site power generation is a supported use. And so the project, as defined in these proffers, does not exclude future on-site power generation. And they didn't say they wouldn't in the meeting. They just said no nuclear. But there is no proffer that excludes nuclear in this document, and there is no proffer that excludes future on-site power generation. So the door is open on that for the future with this document.
Yeah, and further reminder for our folks listening at home, from what I understand, this property or this data center is going to need the equivalent electrical usage of 750,000 homes.
That's correct.
Which is basically a small city. Believe it or not, I am not an electrical engineer nor the chief scientist at NASA, but something tells me like you're not just going to be able to plug into the existing grid and have enough power for this without doing some sort of something to increase the amount of power you can draw. I know
they may be able to get Dominion Power at some point to provide them with that kind of power, but like right now there's like a 5 to 7 year waiting list for that kind of a grid hookup. I don't know what their plans are. It doesn't seem realistic, and this is happening all over the state of Virginia and all over the rest of the United States right now. There isn't the power generation capability to meet the demand from all of these hyperscale data center proposals.
All right, so what did it say about generator testing and emergency use, and what does that translate to in real life?
So they said that they did put in writing that they would be using Tier 4 diesel generators, which at any given time will be the best in class. Tier 4 is the highest rating of a diesel generator, but there is no safe level of diesel fuel in the air. And with 300 of these things, because that's how many there will be, being tested monthly, that's probably 75 to 150 hours of generator noise and diesel fumes. As far as testing, the proffer that they offered was that it would be limited from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Saturday. So that seems nice and reasonable, doesn't it? Comparing this to the Goochland TOD, where their testing limitations are between the hours of 10 a.m. and 5 p.m., 2 hours a day max, and it has to be published on a website calendar and can't be changed with less than 48 hours notice. They have a lot of work to do there to get that to be reasonable.
Let's talk about noise. So they promised, from what I understand, to meet Hanover's noise ordinance. Why could that potentially not be enough, though, especially with low frequency noise? And what is low frequency noise?
Okay, yeah, so Hanover County does have a noise ordinance. It isn't great, it's not terrible, but it doesn't address low frequency noise at all. And because the golf course counts as commercial property, they don't even get the benefit of the residential noise limits. So they could have, industrial level of noise right at their border.
Which as a golfer is what I'm always looking to hear in my backswing is industrial construction.
Yeah, because that just really, brings the whole piece of the game to
Yeah.
you, right?
Yeah.
Richmond and Henrico have much better standards as far as noise protection for the residents. And one other thing worth noting in these proffers for noise, after 30 days of one of the centers coming online and they do a sound study, there are no further testing or mitigation on noise.
Talk to me about lighting. So I understand security lighting is allowed up to 35 feet. What does that actually look like for nearby homes or the golf course?
This is one of the sections of this document. Like, it seems like it's the simplest because everybody knows what a light pole looks like and everybody knows what a light on a building looks like. But because we have no idea what this campus is actually going to look like or how many lights there'll be or how big the parking lots will be, it's really hard to say. I mean, the ones I've driven past at night are lit up like a shopping mall, only more so. I feel like it's going to be pretty bright, but they're saying that it's not. And so I don't know, I'm not taking their word for it.
Well, from what I understand, from just a security standpoint, just because these are such a security risk, like you've got to have it lit up. What do the proffers say about construction hours, and what is, in your opinion, missing from that discussion?
So the construction hours are listed as 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Saturday. Again, I think that is pretty normal in the state of Virginia. Like, I don't know what it is in residential. Is that comparable in your experience, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, you typically that ends up not being much of a problem. But once again, this is heavy industrial construction,
Yeah,
which is
they'll be working on Saturday.
Right. And that's a different beast than, hey, we're framing up a house, and we got nail guns going.
There are no proffers on construction lighting or construction noise. So during the course of this 7 to 10 year time frame, there are no noise protections or light protections. And if you've driven past the Amazon warehouse out there on 623 on the way to the highway, you may have noticed that there's a fair number of lights on it. I'm probably short-term more worried about the construction from a disruption of my life perspective than I am about the data center. I mean, the data center, I feel like, has more health impacts and long-term impacts, but...
Yeah, I mean, 7 to 10 years is not a short period of time. Most people on average historically only stay in their home for the next 7 to 10 years. All right, last one before we move on. What protections exist for nearby wells and wastewater, and what would you say are maybe the gaps in your opinion?
So, well, they're saying that they will drill no more than 3 wells for human use, basically kitchens, bathrooms, janitorial, and for the fire suppression. But there are no proffers on limiting how much water they can use. So they're saying 3 wells, but they aren't saying how much water they are actually going to take. And there aren't any offers for testing on impact or studies before and after impact on neighbors' wells. The same for the sewage and gray water and sewage into drain fields, but there are no proffers for testing on the impact of that on either the neighboring wells or the Chickahominy.
So we kind of zoomed in. Let's zoom out a little bit. Big picture implications. What, in your opinion, does the overall scale of this hyperscale data center development matter here, or why does it matter, in your opinion?
Well, there's a couple of ways to look at that. So I think from a Virginia perspective, it really matters because if local governments will just change their zoning because a lot of money is dangling, this can happen anywhere to anybody. That's an indication of what we're seeing happen. And it is a lot of money and it's hard to turn down, but there's also a huge human impact here and a short-sighted, people aren't looking at the long-term impacts, I don't think. I think the other thing, is that what you were looking for with that question, or were you looking at something different?
Kind of just open-ended, just why you think, what's the impact there? I'll give you another one. So, one of the arguments that's been made is, hey, let's say we approve this and things get going, and then let's say all of a sudden we have an economic shift. If any of our friends at home remember, we had a little bit of a bubble, 20 years ago. Some would argue we're in a little bit of an AI bubble at the moment, and/or the stock market is due for a correction. So let's say economic conditions change in a few years. What risk does that create for the county and nearby residents?
I think it's huge. And I've been doing a lot of research on this. Like, hyperscaler spending is tremendous right now. Microsoft is on track to spend $80 billion by the end of the year. Amazon is spending $100 billion on data centers this year. Record debt is being issued for the construction of these things. The market size is like $7 trillion by 2030. And just like with the housing boom that you referenced and the crash in 2008, there's all kinds of creative financing tricks being employed and a lot of debt being created. Private equity is involved. Regulation is not being very carefully addressed right now. There's a lot of off-balance sheet financing happening, just even outside of like a bubble crash in the economy. Like, let's say that, you know, the bubble does crash and projects are partway completed. These things are going to get abandoned. No one's going to say, oh, well, we're going to clean up the mess we made. We're out of money. They're just going to walk away from it. So your problems are that, you know, you've got a gold rush kind of mentality driving all this investment, but what's going to get left behind? And the very best case here, like if they rezone this as industrial and then this crashes, we're left with 400 acres next door that are zoned industrial and open to development by the next big ugly thing. Like maybe somebody decides to put in a tire recycling facility or who knows what. The worst case is we're left with abandoned buildings full of expensive or impossible to dismantle and recycle technology and a bunch of toxic chemicals. You know, it's going to look like the mills in Youngstown and Pittsburgh for the next 100 years.
And I mean, like, if you look back through the course of history, like things like this have happened. Like the railroads got overbuilt, you know, industry moves and changes. And yeah, I mean, you go down to South Carolina where I went to school, like you see a bunch of abandoned, you know, mills and whatnot, like things like that happen. So that is kind of interesting to think through of like, okay, let's say this goes through and then things don't go the way everybody's planning. All right, so closing steps, action steps. I'm going to ask you to put your coach hat on. Between now and January 15th, what are the 3 most important things Henrico Hanover residents could do, assuming they don't want to welcome this with open arms?
So make sure you're talking to your neighbors, make sure they know this project is happening and the importance of fighting back now. Like this decision will probably be made in February at the Board of Supervisors meeting. I know it's Christmas and all, but January and February are important.
And I'll add one in there. Whatever platform you're watching this video, there's probably a share button somewhere. Very easy. Share, add a couple folks, click it, post it to your social feed. Very easy way to get the word out.
And write to your board, the Hanover Board of Supervisors, tell them that these proffers don't protect nearby residents from what's really an industrial project kind of packaged up as a business park. Go to that Friends of Hanover rally before the planning meeting. Support the cause, show up, and attempt to speak at the January 15th Planning Commission meeting if we have the opportunity to do that. I mean, that's the best we can do. And we got to keep showing up and fighting this.
So final thoughts, final words. If you were going to leave people with one message before they tune off and, you know, start opening presents or presents, what would it be?
So this is, it's a tough fight, but this is a winnable battle because it requires rezoning and it requires a change to the comprehensive plan in Hanover County. And that is a big deal. It's a attention drawing change that they have to put a lot on the line to make, and the residents don't want it. So show up and support them. Let your presence and your numbers support the Hanover people who don't want to see this happen.
There you go. There you go. And guys, what we'll do is we'll try to link up the time and the address of that planning that planning commission meeting on the 15th. Colleen, thank you for jumping on this on a busy Friday right before a holiday. Thank you guys for watching this. Share it with a friend, share it with a neighbor, and we'll see you on the 15th.